Alright, in this video we're going to be covering a little more about strings. The first video we talked about creating them, so we created like a first name and a last name string here, and then we actually made a third string called full name, which concatenated those two strings with a space in between them. Alright, and we started to do the index of method. And basically for strings, remember they're an object type, so you're going to reference them with these different dot operators. Okay, so like the next one says determine if a string contains a word. So like you might have like an example of this is you might have like a sentence, maybe I'll add one here, right? Or a tweet or something like that. And so say that I want to like see if students are talking smack about me, right? So there's a method called contains, which will determine if the sentence contains a certain word. So if I want to search like a bunch of Twitter to see if people are talking smack about me, I would do like sentence, that's the name of our variable, and then dot. Sorry, it takes a minute. First time it kind of errors out for me here. But I'm going to do sentence dot, and then there's one called contains. All right, and if you kind of look at how it's used here, you have to pass in a character sequence, which is just a string. So I'm going to see if it contains Westpatal. All right, and that'll be a true or false variable. All right, and so we could do start to do like an if, like if it contains Westpatal, then we flag it or something like that. But for us, let's just do a Boolean result and set it equal to be whatever is returned by this contains method. Okay, so all this will do is call the contains method, which returns true or false, and then it restores it in that Boolean. Okay, so all we're going to do here is just a basic thing to say, does it contain Westpatal or not? All right, and if we run it, we can see that it is true because Westpatal is right there in the string. So all the contains does is tell you, is it in the sentence or not? All right, index of, remember, returns the actual position of this string if it exists. Right, if it doesn't exist, returns -1. If it does, it returns the position of this string. So actually I should do this. This says -1 in my comment. So this string actually has, first name actually has the CK in there. So maybe I'll change it to be cool. I think is what it was before. So that index of now works the way the comments say. So since cool is not in the string Nick, it just returns -1. All right, got a little off track there, but they're kind of similar. Contains is used in some situations, and index of is used in others. Okay, so this is again getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but there's another method that you can use a lot, which is called .equals, which determines if two strings are equal. All right, and so we could just do, I don't know, we could do string team 1 equals the Packers. We could do string team 2 equals the Vikings. Okay, and if I want to see if those two strings are equal, you can just do like if team 1 dot equals. Okay, so I'm calling the team 1 variable, calling equals on it, and then I want to see does it equal the other team. Okay, and you can actually type another string directly in here. So I could have typed directly Vikings like that. That would work too, but I'll just do team 2. Okay, and again, that's going to be a true or false deal. So maybe I'm just going to sys out that, system out print it. So I'm going to system out print. I know that's looking kind of wacky now, but I'm going to call the equals method, and then it's going to print out the result. So team 1 equals team 2, and obviously Vikings are not equal to the Packers, so it returns false. Okay, and again, I could type it right in here. It is actually case sensitive, so that actually will return false also. But if I make this an uppercase P, then it will return true. Okay, so to tell if they're equal, you use a .equals method. And there is actually, I put in here, there's equals ignore case. So If you ever want to ignore the upper lowercase, you can do it like that. So that's real similar to the equals, except it ignores the uppercase and lowercase. Kind of useful in certain situations. Okay, so the main guts are these are some other methods for string that are kind of super important for the AP test. All right, and there's these methods called substring. All right, so if we look at, so team one is Packers. All right, and so if we want to get the third letter, so it would be the C, we can use what's called like a substring method. Okay, so I'm going to pull up a little file here and talk a little bit more about that. Okay, and I thought a little bit more about this, and I don't actually like these comments, so I'm going to take them out and kind of just make it up as I go. So if you're using this file here, we're just going to kind of make it up as I go. So at any rate, what substring does is just takes part of the string. So when I create this string team one called Packers, it has 7 letters, and the index or position starts counting at 0. So actually the letters are labeled from 0 to 6. All right, and so we use those numbers to get a substring. Okay, so for example, let's say my goal was just to get out this part, ac. I just want to get those 3 letters. Right, what I would do is call the substring method. I would take the name of my string, team1, and then I'm going to call dot substring. Okay, and then I'm going to do, I want those 3 letters. So the first position I'm starting at is 1. Remember, A is actually not at position 2, but position 1, because we're counting from 0. So I'm going to do 1, and then the weird part about substring is you actually have to run 1 past. So in order to get ac, right, I would actually have to do indexes 0 to 4, and you don't get the E, you end up just getting AC, K. Okay, so that's the really weird part about substring is this will return ac without the E on the end, right? So substring, I always say, runs 1 past the last letter that you want. Okay, so just as an example, let's erase this quick and see, maybe you could pause the video here and see, let's say we want to get, let's say, let's just say KER. Actually, this is the KE. Let's just do just the KE. If you want to get just KE, what would you call for substring? Pause the video, give it a shot. Okay, so you'd call team1.substring, and then the first position is 3, and then we want to run 1 past the E. We did 2 to 5, and that will return the KE. Okay, you can also use substring to get like a single letter, right? So I'm going to see, this would be a good challenge for you. So let's say we just want to get this R. All right, what would you do for substring if you wanted to get the single letter R? How would you call it? What 2 indices would you use there? What 2 numbers? Again, hopefully pause the video, give it a shot before continuing. Okay, so you call team1.substring, and then you go from position 5 to position 6. Okay, and that would get you the R, because you'd run 1 pass. So actually this is just the 5th letter, or I guess not the 5th letter, it's technically the 6th, but the letter in the 5th position, right? So that right there will run 1 pass and return just the R. Okay, so one other thing with substring that we need to go over is there's a substring method that takes in just a single number. So far these have taken like a starting position and an ending position, even though it runs 1 past, but it takes in 2 numbers. So there's also a substring that says like take from a certain position all the way to the end. Okay, so if I do that, if I call the substring method with just a single number here, no comma or whatever, just 1 number, it's going to take from that position all the way to the end of the string. So in this case, it would take from position 1 all the way to the end, which would be acres. All right, so if you call it that way, that would be acres. All right, so it's a different kind of substring that takes in only 1 number and it just returns all the way to the end. Okay, So I don't know, just to make sure that that makes sense to you, maybe try one. Let's just say we want to do curs. How would you do substring to get curs? Okay, so hopefully you figured out that it would just be team1.substring and position 3 all the way to the end, and that would return KERS, curs. All right, so what I would say now, let's go back and finish up these notes. So maybe add a few substring calls of your own, and you can use any string you want. So like you could try and get kings from here. That would be maybe a good one to try. But you basically just call whatever string you want dot substring, right? And then whatever. So if I wanted to get kings, I could actually use that substring where I take the from that position on. So the V is 0, I is 1, K is 2. So if I just do 2, that should return kings, right? From team 2, I take from position 2 on, that'll be kings. And I can just verify this. Okay, so basically I'd say play around, do a few substring calls, right? Maybe make some comments on there to make sure you know what it's doing, but that should return kings right there. Okay, and then the final thing too here we should put is there's a method to get the length of a string. So sometimes it's useful to know how many letters it has or how long it is. And how that works is it actually works as you'd expect. So it basically returns a number of letters. Even though this indexes for Packers goes from 0 to 6, it actually has 7 letters. So if you call team1.length, it'll return 7. Okay, so we can go back here and demo this. I'm just going to sys out the results, sys out print. Team1.length. All right, and so that that length method will return how many letters there are in that string. In this case, should be 7. Okay, and so you could see, let's do team 2. See if you could pause the video and figure out how long should team 2 be. All right, so the Vikings have 1, 2, 3. Also has 7 letters. So if we call that length, that should return a 7 also for team 2. Okay, and so just kind of a summary of this is we're calling a bunch of methods. So you use the name of your string, right? And then dot method. All right, and so we've got index of, we did a contains method, an equals method, and then some substrings and length. Okay, and notice that sometimes these are called like parameters. Sometimes you pass in information, so you do substring and then a little number in here that represents the position we want to get the substring of, but not always, right? Length, you're just doing the length, and so you don't have to pass in anything specific here. Right, with equals, you want to say this string is equal to some other string, so you need to pass in the string you're checking against. Okay, so each method is a little different, right? Like sometimes you pass in information to it, sometimes you don't, right? And that's a little confusing, but they have this summary thing that they give you on the AP test, which is kind of helpful. Okay, so I want to close by just showing you this, that here's all the different methods that you have to possibly use on the AP test. Looks like they actually don't even have contains on there. Interesting. Mostly because index of can be used in a similar way to contains probably. But here you can see the length method. This is telling you the return type. So it's saying it returns an int. You can see that the length doesn't need anything to be passed into it. All right, so that's kind of what we're just doing. And you can see here's substring, which returns a string, right, part of the string. And one of the ways to call it is from one position to another. But then they also have this other substring method that takes just a single spot and returns from there to the end of the string, which they're saying is the full length of the string. That's what it's saying right there. So we haven't learned compare to yet, but the rest of these we've talked about. And so this is kind of a summary because it's hard to remember all these method calls and what do you pass in and stuff, but you can reference this, or hopefully that's what your this doc has. You have a bunch of example calls here so you can use back, look back at it when you're doing stuff with strings. All right, I know that's kind of long, but thank you for watching and reach out if you have any questions.